here's the thing. For everybody listening, don't make the same mistake the Bengals just did in any facet of your life.
People are going to get hurt. It's the hockey season.
What about the Jared Cook play on the sideline?
I was very tempted to just put defense.
I'm saying it right now. If Anthony Davis is out for the playoffs, they don't make it out of the first round.
Come on, Austin and I have been saying this ever since Joe Burrow got injured.
I don't really think the Dodgers are going to make the World Series this year. I feel like they'll make it to the NLCS.
The Fernando Tatis extension, because that really surprised me.
Like you said, Ovechkin, he's getting older. He hasn't been playing as well as I imagined. He's one of the greatest goal scorers of all time, but he hasn't started off this season as hot as I would hope.
Hi, I'm Jeff Allen, and you're listening to Outsiders Opinions with Kevin and Austin.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to our own part 2 of this video. I'm joined by the man, thankfully, running this back with me, Austin.
Yeah, Kevin, the podcast landscape has not been the nicest to us. We've had to delve into a lot of different softwares to try to get this to work, but we'll find a way.
Yes, we will find a way, and for here, this really works. It looks like the Chargers are looking for a new head coach and GM. We expected this, probably, after that half.
Yeah, being down 42-0 at halftime is definitely going to cost some people their jobs no matter what, and it deemed to be the end of Brandon Staley. He refused to do what we're doing, which is surviving and adapting. There was not much adapting. It was the same story the past 3 years, just consistent underachievement, and I'm not all that excited for where they had going forward because of their cap situation, and I don't know if they can keep Justin Herbert happy.
Well, kind of going into that, I wasn't a huge fan of the Brandon Staley hire. I thought it was shocking to me. He didn't really have much of a resume outside of the great defense. And he was kind of a guy like, hey, I'm going to bet on myself. And he did a lot of risk-taking. And it seemed like he just kind of went away from that. It seems like he lost confidence in himself or he changed. And it didn't really work out. And he seemed confident that he was going to come back, or that's what he said, as you and I talked about, like the reporter. I like that question. For the tougher job, and let's go into Herbert. Happy. Does Herbert have leverage?
So the Chargers have a lot of problems, and I do think that Justin Herbert holds a lot of leverage in this situation. The Chargers have a bad rushing O-line. They have a bad defense, one of the worst defenses in the league. I mean, they gave up 63 points. I know 14 came off of offensive turnovers by the Chargers, but still 49 points given up to a team like the Raiders who scored 0 points last week. It's just a terrible look for a team that we expected to be a lot better.
Yeah, I said, I think he was in my MVP. I was thinking about it. I thought Kellen Moore was going to do great. I don't know if you can really blame him for it, but on to Herb, I don't know if the NFL, if this were an NBA team, I think Herbert would definitely have leverage and could definitely be traded out. But this could be the first situation where Herbert's like, hey, I don't want to play for you. Trade me.
Yeah, that definitely could happen. This is definitely new ground for the Chargers. They were always a team, whether they made the playoffs or not, that I viewed with a sense of stability. Especially before Staley, when they still had Phillip Rivers, because they were consistently making the playoffs. They had a lot of deep playoff runs, making a couple AFC Championship games. And while they had some bad years, and the year before Herbert was drafted, it definitely wasn't great, but this has to be the lowest point in my lifetime that they've been in, because there is nothing to look forward to because they know with Herbert they're still not good enough, and a lot of the moves are going to have to be making your team worse to get rid of cap, And I know in the last recording you said they have to hit on those picks. Well, it's very hopeful thinking. Like, you have to be almost perfect for this to even result in a mediocre outcome.
Yeah, and kind of hitting on it. I don't see Herbert. It is troubling because like you have this quarterback, you've dedicated money to him, so I just don't see him using that. But he could use it. I think you give him a year or two, he'll be on board. Like, hey, we're trying. But the thing is, for this team, is what does, because it just seems like they've been plagued by injuries. So I don't know if you do something to the training staff, does something with the coaching, but I do agree. I think which like we hinted at it in the last recording, is, to me, you have to get the GM and the coach on the same page. You have to link them together. And you have to have a good GM. You have to have a GM that listens to the coach and understands what he wants, because I think they can be competitive next year. I don't think they can be in the playoffs, but I think they can play some good games. They won't be getting blown out a ton. But you just got to get a GM, because the thing is, to me, I'm hopeful about it because they have their first round and second round picks. They didn't really make a huge trade like the Broncos or the Rams when they just got rid of every pick. So that's why I'm hopeful, is you have the first round pick. So they're bad this year. I don't know what their draft looks like right now.
Yeah, there's so many positions of need, whether it be O-line that can block against or run block. Secondary needs help. Defensive line needs healthy players. Or linebackers aren't great. I guess wide receiver is fine, but Mike Williams continues to get injured. Keenan is old. Quentin Johnston, I still believe in him, even though a lot of players or a lot of people don't. He's a young guy, and I really don't. I give a lot of rookies a vote of confidence because I believe that they're just rookies, and while it may not be the best start of career ever, you can always turn it around eventually, and I think he can. But outside of that, and obviously quarterback, there's a lot of positions of need. So they're drafting whoever they hire as their GM has a lot to think about, whether it be offensive or defensive. And then obviously they have to make the determinant, do they keep Kellen Moore because he's the interim head coach, or do they move him to the OC after they sign a head coach to try to keep some stability around Justin Herbert, because he's had very little of that throughout his career.
Well, Kellen Moore's not, he declined to be the interim. It's their outside linebackers. But yeah, I thought he would have been the interim. And the thing is, right now they're currently at 10. The GM, to me, you got to find someone smart. I'm not familiar with GM candidates as coaching candidates. We can talk about that too, as we talked about Dan Quinn. But the GM, to me, you got to think, you got to solve this quickly because you want to take advantage of Herbert. But because you want to get Herbert to a second contract. That may be their leverage is. Herbert may just go, once his contract is done, hey, I'm not returning. I'm going somewhere else.
That's true. And you can't afford to lose him as well. He is the bright spot on that team, and losing him I think would be, I guess you could go full tank, but it's a little late for that. It's a little late. You already spent a lot of money on him to go full tank now.
Yeah, no, and like, who's going to take it? Because the thing with Herbert is, I think you and I are both, we really love Justin Herbert, but it is a critical point at his career right now. Like, is he an elite quarterback? Can he win you those big games? And we just haven't been able to see it. I think given other reasons, like his defense was just terrible this year, which is why Staley was fired, because he was a defensive guy. Like, how are you not? Like, that's your job, is defense and also head coaching duties.
Yeah, Staley was kind of doomed for a while, especially after, I mean, like you said, he was only the the defensive coordinator for what was it, 1 year?
Yeah, 1 year
with the Rams,
and a stacked defense too.
And you said before as well that was the third head coach that had coached under that GM Telesco.
Yes, and Telesco hired him too, so they were kind of linked together. And when I saw it, I was like, yeah, they're probably going to clean house, which I think is the right move.
Yeah, 100%.
So, man, I really don't know. I think you try to go someone from the Chiefs. You try to find a guy that has maybe you go and a GM that's been out of it for a little bit, and a guy that knows the system instead of an up and coming guy.
Yeah, but that's what a lot of teams think because they want to get ahead of it. I don't know. It's a very confusing situation, and I do not. I don't know if they can make it out of this clean. It's going to be a tough turnaround, and whoever the GM becomes has a very tough job ahead of them.
Yes, and for the people, it's the Chargers are $25 million over the cap. A lot of those guys that leading over the cap are Justin Herbert, Khalil Mack, who's aging, and Joey Bosa. I think you trade Joey Bosa maybe and Khalil Mack and just see what you can get. I think you're just doing that to get under the cap because it would hurt you, but you got to find a way to get under the cap. Maybe you could do some cap wizardry. I'm not sure. You also, another thing could be, you just figure something out, but you got to hit on picks. I think for them to be competing in the playoffs, it's probably going to take at least 2 years. That's my view of it, and that's, I think, taking an optimistic approach.
That's extremely optimistic. They have to make some very big moves, and they have to hit on all of their potential picks. I'm worried. I don't really know what else to add because while they may trade Bosa or Mack or some other people, their defense is still bad, and they're still over the cap if you trade one of those guys. So they have a lot of problems, and those problems I don't think can get fixed quickly.
Yeah. So that's, I think, the GM spot. Coaching, I think there's a lot of talent that could be fixed. You mentioned run blocking. Maybe it's just a different scheme and figuring out what do they do best run blocking. And maybe that's Kellen Moore. My stock has kind of fallen in Kellen Moore. I was really high on him. But given what the Cowboys have been able to do without him, I thought the Cowboys offense was going to be terrible. But it seems like they're reaching the offense has reached new heights, and that's really benefited the team. But I think we talked about it before. Dan Quinn is a good one. If they want to go offense, Eric Bieniemy is to be, for me, a great guy. That would be helpful. He was a guy I wanted before because I like the Chargers. But Dan Quinn, we've seen what he did with the terrible Cowboys defense. Now, they did get Micah Parsons, but that's a thing. So, is there another coach that comes to mind when you think of like, oh, this would be a great guy for the Chargers?
No. I mean, there are some guys I'd be interested in, like Eric Bieniemy. Could he fix kind of what's happening on the offense? But he's still struggling a little bit with Washington, so I don't know. There's a lot of guys I feel like you could give a chance, but
I'm gonna float something out here. However, this wouldn't solve the GM problem because this guy has struggled. What if Bill Belichick leaves the Patriots and goes over to the Chargers?
Mac Jones is struggling after having a great start to his career. I don't know if this is what Herbert needs. I don't think their offense gets any better. I think Bill Belichick's a great defensive coach, the best defensive mind ever. And we've seen by how the Patriots defense has improved over the past couple of weeks, even from being bad to being pretty decent. But he doesn't do much on the opposite side of the ball, and they still have a lot of problems on that side.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna pair this to you because I think Bill Belichick does a great job utilizing players. You've seen what he's done defensively with secondary players. What if you talked about like stability with Justin Herbert? What happens if they keep Kellen Moore? Bill Belichick comes in a coaching role and he gets a GM. I know there are a lot of ifs in this scenario, but what Austin, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I could see that happening, but I still don't know if Bill Belichick wants to leave. I know he wants to get to whatever number of wins. The Patriots firing hasn't been confirmed, correct?
No, it's all speculation. But maybe it's a mutual parting of ways. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I could see it would take a lot, and the problem is it would cost a lot. It would cost a lot to bring in Bill Belichick, and they're already over the cap.
Yeah, that was just something I thought of after we finished. That's all I got. Any final thoughts, Austin?
Nope.
Well, we appreciate you listening. We wish you could have listened to the first one. You can still hear Austin's part. I don't know what happened to my audio. Thank you for listening. Let us know your thoughts, and we appreciate you listening to Outsiders Opinions.